And all right, we are live. So Chris Berry, you're certified LLA attorney, certified financial planner. And every Wednesday, just about every Wednesday, sometimes I'm traveling or something else is going on, we do these weekly wisdom webinars where I just answer questions submitted from people either ahead of time or just live on the call. Okay. So if you do have a question, please put in the Q&A. And if I can't answer your question on the call, if it's something I just don't know off the top of my head, then I'll always circle back and try to get you an answer. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so we always start with positive focus, just something positive that happened over the past week or so. A couple big positive focuses were family-related things, where, first of all, my son surprised him and took him to Disney World. Woke him up at 5 in the morning and said, "Hey, we're going to Disney World." And it was for his 12th birthday. And we went to a big Star Wars, it's called the Galactic Star Cruiser. It was really cool. And then just this past week, my kids and also my parents, we went to Cleveland and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that was pretty darn cool. My parents said they took me when I was younger. I can't remember it, but it was pretty cool. And my whole family really loves music, so it was great for all of us. So that's my positive focus. So let's into the questions. And really, we have, well, before I get into questions, just something, I guess this is something that's come up in client conversations recently, is just talk about what's going on with the market and where things are going, most likely over the next year or so. With everything going on, especially with the Feds, we expect a lot of volatility. And so most likely we're going to have volatility at least until the presidential election. Things should be trending up, but again, when the Feds are throwing things off with some of the things that they say, you're going to see some of these drops. And so with what we're doing with clients is we're typically looking at time horizons. For example, I sat with some hypothetical clients yesterday where we have a good portion of their investments pretty aggressive. And we're talking about, yeah, year to date, we're down. Quarter to date, we're up. But the nice thing is the way that we structure their plan is that they have enough cash, we call it the now bucket of money, so that if there is continued volatility over the next year and a half, it's not like they're having to pull from their aggressive investments during that time. So we're really looking at utilizing time horizons. If there is money that you're sitting on that's sitting in cash, keep in mind inflation right now. So one of the things we've been talking a lot about is I bonds, where if you do have $10, $20, or $30,000, you can get a good potential rate of return of guaranteed roughly 9% rate of return potentially over the next 6 months. And there's some other alternatives, but this is really where it's all about having an actual financial plan versus when the markets were just going up for 13 years straight. It was really easy to just, throw a dart at the board. That's how I'm going to invest. And each year I'll just take my winnings and use that as my income. Well, now we need to actually develop an income plan and investment plan. And then the big thing right now is tax planning with the current tax law. So just something that's come up in client conversations, client reviews. So with that, let's get into some of the questions. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, here we go. So first question that came in, and again, if you do have questions, please put it in the Q&A because I don't have a lot today. Has the IRS finalized its proposed change to inherited IRAs, which require RMDs? Short answer is yes-ish. Long answer is they've been flip-flopping on this for basically since they passed the Secure Act. So going back, just kind of taking one step back historically, what happened late 2019, prior to the pandemic, is the Congress passed what's called the Secure Act. And what the Secure Act says is that when you reach age 72, that's the year now you have to take out RMDs. But also what the Secure Act said, so push back the RMD age from 70 and a half, 72. But really, the real reason they passed the Secure Act was to say that if you have someone other than a spouse who inherits a pre-tax IRA or even a Roth IRA, they have to take all the money out within 10 years. And if it's a pre-tax IRA or pre-tax 401k, they have to pay taxes on. So the question was whether there would be required minimum distributions each year over that 10 years, or was it just that they had to pay it all by year 10? Originally, they said that it had to be paid by year 10. So there's no RMDs, meaning you would not have to pay income tax. The child who inherits this or beneficiary would not have to pay income tax until year 10, and then they'd have to pay tax on everything if they wanted to, or they could pay it up front, or they could do like 1/10 a year. They had their flexibility in the choice. And then there was a publication from the IRS that said, sorry, no, you do have a RMD due every year, which might be 3, 4, 5% each year. And then by year 10, all the taxes have to be paid. So, okay, that changes things. And then the IRS came out and said, no, we screwed up that publication. That was just because we didn't update the manual. And so, no, we still have, you can do whatever you want, but just by year 10, all the taxes have to be paid. Well, then finally, most recently, now what they've said, and this is probably the finalized rule with regards to the IRAs, and it creates some interesting tax preparation issues because this is like a year after the Secure Act already passed. Now what they're saying is if the person who passed away is over the age of 72, then you have to take RMDs based on their age. Okay. So if the RMD at 72, let's say is 4%, then you have to take at least 4%, and then it grows each year if you inherit an IRA. And then all the taxes have to be paid within 10 years. If the person was younger than 72, meaning RMD, that switch wasn't flipped, then you have the freedom to do whatever you want, but by year 10, all the taxes have to be paid. So the question is, has the IRS finalized its proposed changes to inherited IRAs, which require RMDs? My answer to that is yes-ish, because they could flip-flop again. But I feel like this is where they're going to finally land with this. So yeah. So that's kind of the Secure Act and how it relates to IRAs. Now, the next question here, tax paid. So it's a question on alternative minimum tax versus taxes paid. You know what? I'll answer that one offline. If you can email me just a little more detail on what we're talking about there, Vicky, we can go ahead and address that. The big thing with AMT and the Inflation Reduction Act, which is passed, like all of it applies to corporations. It doesn't apply to individuals. But shoot me some more information on what you're trying to get at, and I'll make sure to get you an answer on that one. Another question that just came in: do RMDs apply to Roths? Yes, RMDs also apply to Roth IRAs, but you don't have to pay any tax on it. So let's say a child inherits a Roth IRA, which means it's post-tax and it grows tax-free. They can allow it to continue to grow tax-free until year 10. Then at that point, they have to take it out of the Roth. No tax is owed, but now they have to invest it in something like a taxable account or reposition it somewhere else. But it cannot stay in the inherited Roth IRA for more than 10 years. By year 10, all the money has to come out of the Roth. So Roths are still good. And if you were to ask me, if I was to inherit anything, do I want to inherit pre-tax dollars or post-tax or Roth money? I would for sure take post-tax and Roth money all day. And so that's why, like, especially with the current, like I mentioned, taxes being one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities. You look at the Inflation Reduction Act, it does nothing to actually reduce inflation. So we're still sitting at $31 trillion of debt. And then we have the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expiring in 2025. So we know taxes across the board are going up 3 to 4%. So one of the things that we've really been focusing on and banging that drum is looking at moving money from those pre-tax accounts, creating a IRA exit strategy so that the rest of your retirement is more tax efficient, or even a 0% tax, depending on your situation. And then also what you're leaving as a legacy to the next generation. They're not going to be saddled with all the taxes, because keep in mind, when say your beneficiaries or children inherit these pre-tax accounts, not only do they have their own income that they're earning, like if your child's an engineer or something like that, or a doctor, he's a high earner, has a high income, but now they have to pay tax on whatever they inherit from you over a period of 10 years as well. So like I was talking to a hypothetical client the other day. They didn't have any children, but like both of us, not to get political, were like, I don't want to give the IRS any more money than I have to. So if we can develop a strategy to minimize taxes and put more money in my pocket and my family's pocket than in the IRS, I'm a big fan of that. So that's something that we're really passionate about. Another question here. So the upside to a castle trust is asset protection. Yep. So there's different types of trusts in the world. There's revocable trusts that avoid probate, control the distribution. Then there's what's called a castle trust, which is a form of asset protection trust. The advantage of the castle trust is that it protects you from creditors, lawsuits, etc. And then the big thing is it protects you from the devastating cost of nursing home care, which these days runs $10,000 to $15,000 a month. So we move the assets into the castle trust. And then if you were to make it 5 years, because Medicaid looks back 5 years to see if you moved any money around, and if you have, they're going to penalize you. But once you make it 5 years, 100% of what's in the trust is protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend out. So that's the advantage of it. So the question is, what are the disadvantages of the castle trust? Well, there's 3 things that I think people need to understand with regards to the castle trust. First is we cannot put pre-tax IRA money into the castle trust because you have not paid the tax on it. You still have a partnership with the IRS. Those IRAs are what we call tax infested. You have to get rid of that debt that you owe the IRS that we know is going up in the future. Because right now, if you're at a 22% tax bracket, we know that's going to be a 25% tax bracket. So think of it as you have an adjustable rate mortgage on your IRA. Like you might look at it and see, hey, I have $1 million. You don't have $1 million. You still have to pay tax. There's a mortgage of say 200,000. And with where taxes are going, that payment that you owe to the IRS is going to go up the longer that you wait. So, and also you're not in full control. And that's where the castle trust comes into play is if you have pre-tax dollars, you have to pay the tax to move it into the trust. But that's been something that even if you're not doing a castle trust, we've been working with our clients to pay the tax because we know taxes are going up. That's what the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act says. Plus, we're $31 trillion in debt and both sides are spending money. They're just spending it on different sides or different things. So that's the first thing to keep in mind or disadvantage of the castle trust is that it cannot protect IRA money. But that's where we engage in that IRA exit strategy to fund the castle trust. Second, the trust is a irrevocable trust, but we need to understand what irrevocable means. And I don't like using that word because first, it's hard to pronounce. And then second, it creates, in people's heads, it creates scenarios that are not true. So with the castle trust, just like the revocable trust, you serve as trustee. So you're in charge. If you want to sell your house, you can do that. If you want to change your investments, you can do that. If you want to go from Google stock to Apple stock, you do that. Second, with the castle trust or with the revocable trust, bless me, sneeze. With the revocable trust, you pay taxes the same way you normally do. Same with the castle trust, exactly the same. You pay taxes exactly the same way that you normally do. So it's not like a separate tax return or anything. Third, you can change beneficiaries with a revocable trust. Same with the castle trust. Even though it's irrevocable, you can change beneficiaries. Next, with a revocable trust, you can take the assets directly out of the trust, put it back in your name. And this is where it's a little bit different. The castle trust, you can take and only you can take the assets out of the trust, but you have to move it to a separate account. We call it a key holder account, and then you can put it back in your name. So that one extra step of how we transfer assets out of the trust, getting it back into your name, that's what builds in the asset protection. So I guess a disadvantage is there's one extra step if you're looking to take money out of the castle trust. And then the third disadvantage is it's a little more of a cost. It's a lot more of a complicated document. We try to make it as simple and as easy to understand as possible. And our goal is never to complicate things, but if you do want those additional benefits of the asset protection, then the additional complications and cost of a castle trust may make sense. So thank you for that. All right, any other questions coming in? All right. All right. And that looks like it is it. So look, here one came in. Give me a second here. Whoop, no, open. Upsides, castle shuttle. Maybe to clarify, upside. Nope, oh, here we go. Key holder, a beneficiary. So yeah, with the castle trust, we need to name someone else, like say a child, adult child, someone else as what's called the key holder. Now the key holder can't go in and take any money out. They just provide an escape hatch to get the money from the trust to that key holder account that you're joint on, and then from that key holder account, then we move it back into your name. So it's just one extra step. And yeah, a lot of times one of the key holders will be like one of the kids. You open up a joint account, and then you and only you, not the kids, can move the money from the trust account to the key holder account, and then you move it from the key holder account back into your name. Key holder, the kids have no idea what's in the trust. They have no control of it. They can't move any money. It's just a way to provide an escape hatch. So okay. So with that, I want to thank everyone, and just a little scheduling thing. We'll be back on next week, but the 14th and the 21st, I will be traveling, but we will be on next week. So check your emails. And if you do have a question, please just reply to the email.